Magomed Ankalaev warns Alex Pereira ahead of UFC 313, saying, "I'm going to punish you." Also, everybody was in the house at Trump's inauguration, including Dana White, Joe Rogan, John Jones, and Colby Covington. Throughout the podcast, we'll look at the upcoming UFC schedule as well as break down the new top 20 on the do list. Stay tuned.
Broadcasting live from an undisclosed location. This is the TCMMA Podcast with your host, Chris Cross.
Whoa!
Dana White privilege.
Let's go, baby! Let's go! Let's go! Let's go! Let's go, baby!
Dana White privilege. Privilege.
Welcome to the TCMMA Podcast. It's your boy Chris Cross checking in a rare weekday podcast, because usually your boy's working, but guess what? It's snowing outside. It's like -2 degrees and no work today. So we're here on the podcast and we got a little bit to talk about, because just the other day, Alex Pereira versus Magomed Ankalev was finally announced for UFC 313. So we're going to get into that prediction here in just a few moments. But first, let's wrap up UFC 311. Even though we wrapped it up already, there's still stories coming out. So let's hit those first and then move on. Number one, Merab Dvalishvili shares footage of pre-UFC 311 injury he hid from the commission. So if you haven't heard about this, he had a cut that required like 27 stitches, and he hid it from the commission when they're, kind of checking you out before to make sure you're good to go. How you hide that, I don't know. Now, the thing did close up about a week before the fight, and, but it's still tender going into the fight, and to still win the fight the way he did, it's unbelievable. Merab said, when asked, California has a very strict commission. The commission guy asked me to show him my shin, so I lifted up my leg pant to show him my shin. He kept talking and then asked to show my other leg, so I showed him my left leg again, and then he never knew about the cut. So Merab Dvalishvili hiding that from the commission, and that's phenomenal that, he sustained an injury and was still able to fight the way he did. This was reported by MMA Junkie. So, again, he goes in there and he dominates the fight. And he said this on the Ariel Helwani show, by the way. That's where the quote came from. And, it's just amazing that he's able to still go in there and do what he did despite sustaining the injury. And he just, he got off to a slow start. But once you're in there, man, you're in there. It probably left his mind. And then from rounds 3 to round 5, he got one judge in the second round. But from rounds 3 to 5, it was a clean sweep. And therefore, he won by unanimous decision over a very good fighter in Umar Nurmagomedov. So that's the report there. It just makes the storyline even better for him to come away with a victory. Also pertaining to UFC 311, DC Daniel Cormier, who will be in a showdown with Chael Sonnen at the Ultimate Fighter this year. But he says after UFC 311, where he disagrees with Dana White, saying, I believe it still needs to be Sarukian in terms of Makhachev's next opponent for the lightweight title, because I believe that Sarukian, even though it's a rematch, even though we know Charles Oliveira is supposed to be next, I still feel like Sarukian's size, his abilities, his skill set could present the biggest problems for Islam Makhachev. Now, the trouble here for Dana White is going to be, and going back to the Merab injury, okay, Merab hides 27 stitches from the commission, still fights. Then you look at Arman Sarukian and it's like, listen, I have back problems, not big right now, but I broke my back years ago. And every now and then you'll bend over and not think about it, or just do something and you'll tweak it, and it could really take you out. I mean, like a lower back injury, even just soreness in the muscles could just mess up the whole way you walk and move. I mean, you're totally limited. So I don't want to discount the injury to Sarukian, but when you see what Makhachev did take in the fight late. You see Merab had an injury and still stepped in and got the job done. These are warriors. And again, I don't want to discount Sarukian, but the trouble for Dana White is going to be, do I want to put my faith in this guy only for this to happen again? And that's a problem. So that's the biggest thing going against Sarukian, and Dana White, more or less, not to quote exactly, saying he's got to get back in line. I mean, the guy's got to get back in line. That's the bottom line. And if I'm Dana White, I say the same thing. You got this big fight in 24 hours before. The contender is going to step out in a main event on a pay-per-view card. That could derail everything. And imagine if Islam says, no, it's no good. It ended up being a benefit for the UFC, as it always is, because everyone's tuning in like, what if Renato Moicano can beat Islam? Although we all know how that fight was going to go. You don't know until you see it. So, yeah, I understand what DC is saying, but the bottom line is Dana White is not backtracking on his statements. That's for sure. Now, before we get to Donald Trump's inauguration, UFC star Paddy Pimblett turned up at gym, which I've seen his video, to settle feud with fighter who challenged him. So this guy challenged him, was talking trash. Paddy went to his gym and basically submitted him, if that's what you want to call it, because they had a no tap rule. And once he cinched in the rear on this guy, it took a couple minutes, but he stood and struck. They were standing and striking for a minute, trading kicks and things of that nature. Well, Paddy finally had enough, picked him up, dumped him, and within a minute, locked in the rear. And the guy tapped, but Paddy didn't let go. And it took like the whole gym to get Paddy off because they had a no tap rule. And at the end of the day, Paddy Pimblett dominated this guy, as you would expect. Now, is this a good thing for a UFC fighter to do? Probably not. But when you're dealing with fighters, these are the guys you want in the UFC, who aren't scared to fight anyone at any time, despite the risk. Right? Again, going back to UFC 311, Islam Makhachev fighting despite the risk. Dvalishvili fighting despite the risk. Now, yeah, there's millions of dollars on the line, but Paddy Pimblett is like, I'll do it for free. And went and whooped the guy, and that's the way it went down. So if you didn't see that video, it's a quick 3 or 4 minute watch, but Paddy Pimblett just dominates this guy. And it won't be the last time someone talks trash, but it might be the last time that a UFC fighter goes to the guy's gym and still whoops him there. So, doubt there'll be a sit down with Dana White or anything like that. But the bottom line is, how are you going to stop the fighters from doing this? I just think they got to be thinking better. If you want to fight me, work your way in the UFC and make it happen. Otherwise, shut up and carry on. Now, this past Monday, we're 2 days past it now, almost 48 hours, but first podcast since. And we got to talk about Donald Trump's inauguration. I mean, what a show, what a display. The fact that they moved this thing inside and still got it going. I was totally impressed once they got to the arena. With the parade, it made it even better. You had the high school bands, the military bands, you had college bands, and I love that stuff because growing up in Florida, playing football there, these are the types of things you see as a kid, especially when you have a halftime where you're not going inside anywhere, you're just staying on the field, and you see these bands come out, and it's like a rock show, man. You got dancers in front of the bands, you got the drum line, everything is happening, man. And these bands are big time, and it was good to see some of the biggest bands in the country on full display for the indoor parade in DC. Now, at some point, I mean, Trump had went to so many things and gave so many speeches, but at some point he took pictures with guys like Dana White and Joe Rogan. And I immediately forget Trump and Dana White. I looked right at Joe Rogan's face to see if I could see anything, and there wasn't much there, but I just got the feeling that Joe Rogan's like, man, I wonder how this is going to play out. Not like he's forced into a picture, but kind of taking the picture like, I wonder how the criticism for this will be, as if Joe Rogan really cares. He did kind of have that look on his face, but at the same time, it was so important for him and a lot of guys to be there because they played a role in this thing. And I don't even know if Joe Rogan likes to be thought of that way, that I played a role in the election, but the bottom line is he did, because Kamala Harris didn't show up to his show. And that gave Trump a big edge. And then you hear Trump on Joe Rogan saying things like California has no water, and you see everything that's transpired there. It's crazy at the end of the day. But to see all the UFC guys there when knowing if Kamala Harris would have won or whoever the Democrat, it doesn't really matter, whoever the Democrat person would have been, you're not going to see Dana White, Joe Rogan, Conor McGregor, all those guys, um, you know, at this thing and celebrating and things of that nature. Colby Covington, Bryce Mitchell, and a lot of other big UFC stars too. Those are just to name a few. But completely exciting to see the UFC represented. Forget Trump, but at the president's inauguration. I mean, that's a big deal. So for the next 4 years, it's going to be all love for the UFC. Now, will there be retaliation later? You never know. You absolutely don't know. Now, Magomed Ankalaev has a warning for Alex Pereira, and then we're going to get to the prediction. He said, I believe it was on Twitter or X, I'm going to punish you for ducking me, and I'm going to make you look like a guy that works in a tire shop, not a professional fighter. So, not the best way to get at someone, but you understand he's from a different country. He's trying to say what he can say. And the bottom line is he's looking to go in there and dominate Alex Pereira. Will he? I don't know. That's why we got the prediction. So rather than get into this thing any further, let's get into the prediction, and then we'll discuss this fight and potentially others on the card. So stay tuned. In the light heavyweight division, for the light heavyweight division title, it's finally official. You got Alex Pereira, current champ, 12-2. It's hard to believe he only has 14 fights. Taking on Magomed Ankalaev, the big Russian. He's 20-1. So he deserves a title shot, and he finally gets it. Now, Pereira 1 inch taller at 6'4". He's 37. Ankalaev is 32, so he's right in the prime. Pereira 4-inch reach advantage. Both guys stand right-handed. Pereira 5.5 significant strikes per minute at 3.6 for Ankalaev. And neither guy really lands a lot of takedowns, but Ankalaev can get like 1 over the course of 3 rounds. So maybe he gets 2 in this fight. But Pereira 70% takedown defense. That's above average. And he's just been dominant over the last 5 fights in the light heavyweight division, taking down Jan Blachowicz by split decision. More to come on that particular opponent. Yuri Prochazka, KO. Jamal Hill, KO. Yuri, KO. Khalil Roundtree Jr., KO. So 4 straight KOs over the last 4 fights, and he's just at his height right now. Ankalaev beat Rakic by decision. Johnny Walker, KO. Now, Jan Blachowicz, who they both have a common opponent, he lost. Actually, no, it was a draw that he fought Jan Blachowicz to a split draw. And basically, that took away his opportunity there to win the belt. If he'd have been a little more aggressive, he probably would have beat Jan Blachowicz. Probably beat him anyway with 78-55 in significant strikes, 2-0 in takedowns, but a very boring fight to watch at that time. And you remember Dana White wasn't happy. So very close against a common opponent. So there's a reason to believe that this fight is going to be very close. But I got to lean towards Alex Pereira. I mean, the guy's the current champ. He lands 5.5 significant strikes per minute. He tends to lower the numbers of his opponents. I think Ankalaev is going to have to take this fight to the ground, and he probably will once or twice. But remember, Pereira is Brazilian, so he has some ground game if necessary. But his kickboxing style really messes with his opponents. Again, brings down their numbers, so I have no reason to believe that Pereira will fall here. I like him to win. Probably by decision. I think it goes all the way, if I had to guess. But Pereira wins on the feet, defending takedowns. Maybe he gives up 1 or 2, but he dominates on the feet to move to 13-2 and retain the belt here. Light heavyweight division, UFC 313. Yeah, so the bottom line is we got no reason to go against Alex Pereira, right? I mean, he can beat almost anybody. I mean, the last loss he had was against Adesanya in the middleweight division. He's undefeated in the light heavyweight division. Ankalaev, seemingly the top-ranked opponent, or the best opportunity to go against him that can beat him. I still think Hamza is the only guy that can really beat him in the light heavyweight division. So therefore, I got no choice but to go with Pereira. I mean, that's the bottom line. Pereira just seems dominant right now. I mean, the guy just seems dominant. Now, when you look at the do list, you see Alex Pereira is right there at number 3. No change in the top 10, really. I mean, with Islam winning and Merab Dvalishvili winning, they're still 4-8. So no change there. Then you get into the top 20, 11 through 20. You got Sean Strickland. All these guys getting ready to fight. Sean Strickland 11, Adesanya 12, Yuri 13. Those guys all getting ready. Or actually, Yuri already fought, so I need to change that back to White. But he jumped up with a big win over Jamal Hill, and Jamal Hill fell out. And guess what? Tatiana Suarez, who I believe in this next card, can steal the belt from Zhang Weili, jumps into the top 20. And guess what? If she wins that fight, she's got to be in the top 15, if not 11, 12, or 13, or maybe the top 10, because she's undefeated and has a big opportunity for sure. Now, in terms of the UFC schedule, what's coming, we got Saudi Arabia, not this week, but next week, February 1st, Adesanya versus Mayvov. Then you got UFC 312. We're well aware of that. Then UFC Vegas 102, Cannonier versus Rodriguez. UFC Seattle, February 22nd, Cejudo versus Song. Then UFC Vegas 103, Royval versus Manel Kopp. That's going to be a good one. UFC 313, Pereira versus Ankalaev. And we have not had an announcement yet for March 15th, March 22nd, or March 29th as far as who those main events will be. They already got, the following week, April 6th book. They got, I believe it's April 13th, if I'm not mistaken on the dates. That'll be in Miami at UFC 314. So we don't have a break for at least 10 weeks, all the way to mid-April. And I don't, it might be all of April. We'll have to wait and see. But the UFC is rolling right now and has at least the next 10 weeks slated for fights. So that's highly exciting. And it's going to cause us to have a lot of work. Make no mistake about it. I mean, we're going to have a lot of work to do over the next few weeks. But that's the way it goes. Ankalaev says, I'm going to punish you. But I don't think so. I still got Alex Pereira winning this fight. Please believe it. For now, this is your boy Chris Cross. Hope you have a great day. And God bless. As always, peace.